Hello, in this video I'm going to carry on from where I left off in the last one. I'm going to put 2 links up for the first 2 videos of this series so you can watch it. It doesn't really matter what order you watch it in. You'll notice I have different clothes on throughout this video as I keep thinking of new bits I want to add in. A highly manipulative person who's lacking in empathy, they'll be really good at studying someone and really learning about how they tick, and they will copy the other person in order to bond with them so that the other person will trust them. So they'll think, oh, they're just like me. But actually they're not. They're nothing like them. They're just studying them. So they try to emulate the same emotions that they see other people experiencing. But because they don't experience those feelings with them, because they don't empathize, they find it really hard to do that. And because they haven't been through that themselves. So, and that's what I see in Amber Heard. That's what comes across to me, at least. This expression is, to me, this looks like I feel sorry for myself, feel sorry for me. When you're trying to say to somebody, feel sorry for me, that's a sign that you don't really trust what they're feeling at the moment towards you. So your focus is on them and on trying to get them to see you in the light that you want them to see you in. It's not on how you're feeling. And that's something that comes through over and over again with Amber Heard, that it always seems to be that her focus is on the audience, her potential audience, and how they're viewing her rather than on the emotion itself.
Yes, I do. And what if any...
So why is she sniffing? And what she does with her tongue, that's what you do when there's tears and mucus near your lips.
Yes, I do. And what if any...
Thinking, how much time do I have till I figure out what I need to do? Because, God, did he just hit me? No, I didn't want to leave him. I didn't want this to be the reality. I didn't want to have the man I was in love with. I know you don't come back from that. I'm not dumb. I know you can't hit a woman. You can't hit a man. You can't hit anyone. You can't just hit somebody.
But she hit him, and the court has heard her tell him he's a baby for not being okay with her hitting him. It's clear in the recordings that she's saying that she doesn't know if she can stop hitting him when he hasn't hit her. He repeatedly says that she starts physical fights, and she never disagrees with that.
I know you can't hit a woman. You can't hit a man. You can't hit anyone.
Why would she add this on, that you can't hit a man, you can't hit anyone? At the same time as telling us her story, she's also trying to tell us she would never have hit Johnny. She's trying to convince us of that through telling us that these are her morals. So, and that just in itself feels like so much work is going on behind the scenes. It's just another example, I think, of her being manipulative. And so it just makes it hard again to take her seriously. It actually reminds me of Chris Watts, because he would do a lot of that as well. Chris Watts murdered his wife and 2 small children in Colorado in 2018. I made a lot of videos on it analysing Chris Watts because there was so much to analyse. There was so much footage, so that was really helpful. But it also affected me a lot and affected a lot of people because of all the footage of Shanann, his wife, and the children. It felt like you knew them. And it was one of those cases that if you don't know about it, where you felt like you just wanted to rewind what happened. You just wanted to get her out of the situation before it happened. People tended to think Chris Watts was a nice guy, and even after the murders, a lot of people on social media were backing him up and saying, oh, he's so nice, he'd never do something like that. He must have been driven to it. It must have been that his wife was awful. But it was all a facade, and that was what I wanted to point out in my videos. He tried hard to come across as the perfect dad in the police interviews, but because he didn't love his kids, he didn't know what it would feel like to be that person. And so he used a lot of flamboyant, exaggerated language, and he sounded like a badly written film script.
I know. What about the girls? Bella and Celeste are the light of my life. I'd do anything for those girls. I'd step in front of a bullet so in front of a train for those girls. It doesn't add up to me, then why did the spark die? The the relationship between me and Shanann has nothing to do with the love I have for these girls. I mean, the love for these girls, they're the light of my life. I would do anything for them.
And it was how he tried so hard to come across as this perfect, sweet person that gave him away. With this lack of awareness comes arrogance. Because it's a package deal. Someone who doesn't know how others feel because they're split off from themselves will have a false perception of who they are and of how others see them. Amber Heard, like Chris Watts, seems deluded about how persuasive she actually is. And I think she's also trying to come across in a way that she thinks a victim of domestic violence would come across, as somebody who has that kind of outlook, which she clearly doesn't have because we've heard it in the recordings. And in reality, as I've said in the last video, you don't tend to have perfect victims. Often things get messy in abusive relationships, and often the person who's abused ends up at some point in the relationship, when they've been through enough trauma, they end up hitting back, whether, as I said in the last video, whether emotionally or physically. So if anything, her attempts to sound so perfect actually make me feel more suspicious. She did the same thing when she ticked every box she could think of for PTSD for Dr. Curry, and to the point where no one who actually has PTSD would tick all of those boxes. So again, she didn't have the awareness to understand what someone might feel like when they're going through that, and she took it to an extreme. She's also done this when she talks about how worried she is for Johnny Depp's health all the time. She comes across as if she's so caring, and that was what would upset her so much when he left her. And we know that's not true because we've heard the recordings. We've heard the real reason why she was getting upset when he would walk away during a fight or hide himself in the bathroom.
When you can't just hit somebody because I knew it was wrong, and I knew that I had to leave him.
This last bit, when she said, I had to leave him, it sounds like she's almost given up on trying to convince people.
I knew it was wrong, and I knew that I had to leave him. I won't even have realized it.
Like her sentences have stopped and started, and now she's just trying to finish up so that she can they're going to cut it, and she's going to try again in a moment.
I just sat there thinking, how much time do I have till I figure out what I need to do? Because, God, did he just hit me?
The unfinished sentences continue.
No, I didn't want to leave him. I didn't want this to be the reality. I didn't want to have the man I was in love with. I know you don't come back from that. When you can't just hit somebody because I knew it was wrong, and I knew that I had to leave him.
So I went and did that film in October of 2014 in Georgia while he finished his movie in London. And then at some point he came out to pick me up in Georgia and was there for my last day or two of filming.
And then she gets interrupted.
I'm going to ask you to turn to, Michelle, can you bring up 310, please? Defendants 310.
She drops all of that emotion very quickly. She looks at her audience, she looks at the jurors quite often as if she wants to see what the reaction is. But someone who's really talking about something traumatic feels incredibly vulnerable. They're going to be lost in the moment they're remembering, because if it's traumatic, then it's going to be an overwhelming experience. So they're going to be looking away. They might be looking at the floor, or they might be looking past people. That they're lost in that moment, and they're feeling something that is going to feel really personal, that they're not going to feel safe with strangers experiencing with them. They're not going to be making eye contact with people in an audience. Whereas, of course, an actor is the exact opposite. When you're playing a part, you know, the whole point is that you want the audience to feel what you're feeling and be there with you. So, and when people do it really well, it's because they go back to those moments themselves, you know, moments that have been similar for them or have brought up similar feelings. And so it is natural enough for us to believe them. But with Amber Heard, it seems like her focus is on trying to bring the audience in rather than on what she's actually saying. Let's go back to the moment where she's just described thinking she might be about to die.
He's gonna kill me now, and I'm not. He's gonna kill me, and he won't even have realized it. Won't even have realized it.
Look at where her focus is. She's very confidently looking at the people who are watching her. I saw a really interesting video. I'll put a link in the description. There was a lawyer in it who had been present during Amber Heard's testimony, and he watched the jury and how they were responding to her. He said they weren't giving her anything. Some of them were looking away, some were looking down. She wasn't getting feedback that anyone was on her side. And that's when someone can go for broke, as he put it. So she went all out and got really emotional to really try and get I keep calling them the audience because I think that's how she sees it, the jurors on her side. And when I say she sees it as the audience, I'm not even thinking of that in terms of her being an actress, but her as a person always acting. You know, the way that she comes across as somebody who does appear to have histrionic personality disorder, you know, she's always on stage. So she's going all out, really trying to elicit sympathy from them. And she's looking through the jurors, trying to find someone on her side.
Won't even have realized it.
When she's looking in this direction, she's apparently looking at two female jurors. They were sitting next to each other in the right-hand corner. There were apparently some she would try to make eye contact with and others she'd know to not try with. She seems to me to be scanning the room to see how people are viewing her, but surreptitiously, like she doesn't want anyone to see. And that's not where someone's focus is going to be if they're really in their emotions. I think if any of us were in court, we'd want to be believed. We'd hope we would be, but would we try and make that happen? Would we try to make people believe us? Would we try to force a connection between ourselves and the jurors to control how they perceive the case? I don't think she does that just because she's in court. I think she does it because it's her default position. I think she's a highly manipulative person, and highly manipulative people are used to having others on their side. They're used to ensuring they're on their side. And they do that through charming them, through finding their weak spots and exploiting them, through love bombing them. For her, her default position seems to be, I'm going to get you to be on my side. I'm going to hypnotize you to believe what I'm saying. So there's a charm she's used to having, a power she's used to having over people, and with it a sense of entitlement that she has the right to be believed, even though she keeps lying. These are traits of a highly manipulative person. Their sense of entitlement together with the focus on charming people to be on their side. And she's used to behaving in this way. You can see that. You can see that from how automatic it is, the way that she slips things in, trying to get them under the radar, one thing after the other.
Defendants 310.
Was that a little smile beginning just before she brought her tissue up and covered her mouth?
Defendants 310.
This half smile happens 15 seconds after this. So you can see how quickly she changes from one apparent emotion to the next. You can have lots of different emotions about something that's happened to you, but not all at the same time. And with Amber Heard, she goes very quickly from one to the other, and that's what feels over-dramatised about it, or at least one of the things that does to me. That feels more like, and I keep getting this impression throughout her testimony, like she's really trying to summon these emotions in order to play the role better. It feels like a rehearsal. She's been practicing the script, but she hasn't quite got into the character yet. And she's really trying, and almost by exaggerating all these emotions, it's like she's trying to believe it and feel it.
I thought if I got up out of that room, I'd leave the best thing that ever happened to me. And I wish I could sit here and say I stood up and I walked out of that house and I drew a line and I stood up for myself. But I was just looking at the dirty carpet trying to will myself to get up.
It reminds me of a trailer for something on Netflix, where they'll show you the peak moments, the times that are really the most dramatic, to really try and quickly reel you in.
And that's what broke my heart, because I didn't want to leave him. Could have hit me with your hands. Why did you headbutt me?
During these moments, she does seem to be in her real emotions. And now the focus changes when she seems to remember she has an audience. I've thought quite a lot about what one of the psychologists said about Amber Heard having histrionic personality disorder. I've worked with people who are histrionic, and what I've found is when they're able to get into their real feelings and they're talking about an experience that was traumatic, say for instance in childhood, that you don't see all of that over-dramatising, that it's not performative and it's actually very real and they can be vulnerable. And I don't see that in Amber Heard. I'll look at histrionic personality disorder in another video, but what I said about how she might always speak in this kind of way could suggest it's just a mannerism. In reality, it's not as simple as someone having a different accent or a habit of overemphasizing words or a tic or something. People with histrionic personality disorder exaggerate and over-dramatize and make things up because they crave attention. They do things for it that others wouldn't. So combine that desperate need for attention with borderline personality disorder and despising rejection, and then add on strong narcissistic traits. There may be some evidence of all of these in the audio we've heard of her arguing with Johnny Depp, though it's important to remember we don't have all of the context. But if she does have these personality disorders and these traits, then you may have some strong motives for manipulating the public and a court. Other than the way Amber Heard presents, there's the evidence, and that's what it should all come down to. I'm worried that people will believe her and that none of this is true. And that's what I'm leaning towards, because that's what's coming across to me. But there are things that do come across as more genuine, like when she's talking about the drugs that Johnny Depp was on and how he'd be lying passed out and things like that. But the most important things, the things that are relevant in this court case about him abusing her, they don't seem true. And some people are not going to pick up on that. If one person in the jury believes that Johnny Depp hit her, then she will win. So only one person has to believe her. I'd be really curious about the percentage of people who believe her when they watch her testimony versus the percentage who don't. And Amber Heard could win on a technical point because one of Amber Heard's lawyers told the jury that even if he was verbally abusive once, Amber Heard should win. That's not how Johnny Depp's lawyers see it, because the article was about physical and sexual abuse, but it's up to the jury how they're going to see it. I'm going to leave it here, but I'm putting up another video tomorrow. That one's about Johnny Depp's lawyers interrogating Amber Heard and what we can learn from that about communicating with a toxic person. So here's a snapshot of that one. So she cried after this, but she didn't cry during it. She didn't cry because of how Amber Heard was behaving. She didn't ask Amber Heard to stop being like that. She didn't say, why are you lying? Why are you doing this to me? Why are you doing this to Johnny? We know you're lying, just admit it. None of that happened, obviously. You know, she wouldn't be very good at her job if it did happen. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and I'll see you in the next video. Yeah?
Yes, darling. Yes, darling. Yes, baby.